All right, it's after 12, so let's get this party started. I would like to start by just blessing the food and saying a quick prayer, and then we'll get into the topic of the day. So if you guys don't mind, put the forks down for just a second, and we'll bless the food. Lord, thank you for bringing us together today. Please bless this food, continue to bless our lives. We are so fortunate to be able to know our Father and the Creator of this place. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the blessings. Please help me to deliver some information today, and God, just be with us as we go forward. Thank you again. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, so really informal today. I know most of you pretty well. I've probably sold houses for you or with you and been on the other side a couple of times. So I want it to be conversational. I want it to be interactive. You definitely don't have to wait till the end. If you got a question, feel free to ask right away. So I will start by, I got distracted when you guys got here. There we go. Let me get this back on slideshow mode here. We'll go from the beginning. It's not connected. Carl.
Coming.
No. Always good to have a tech guy in the room. All right, so you guys sent in a bunch of questions. So normally at the end of the presentation, you have a screen that says Q&A. Let's have questions. But you guys have already sent it in, so we are going to start with the questions. That is not my house, but I've had many houses that look just like that. How many of you guys are landlords already? All right, so y'all probably seen this kitchen before then, right? Yeah, good. All right, so we asked you guys already to come up with some questions. One of you guys asked, how did you get started? So I bought my first house in December of 2000. My grandparents called and said, hey, we're losing our house, and it's going to sell at the courthouse steps on January the 2nd if you don't buy it. And so my first foray into rental property was a pre-foreclosure. So that's a term that's kind of popular these days because Zillow puts it out there when somebody's about to lose their house. Zillow finds out about it, it gets marked as a pre-foreclosure, and all of the smart investors in the room are like, hey, you want to sell your house? So that's kind of how I got started. So that was the first one. The second one is a little interesting too. I combined creative financing and a HELOC. Everybody probably knows what that is, home equity line of credit. So that first house that I bought, my grandparents had equity in it. They owed $33,000 on it. And back in December of 2000, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house was worth $76,000. And so I wish I would have bought 100 of them back then. But anyway, so it was worth 76. They owed 33. I went to the banker and I said, what do we do? And he said, well, because of the relationship you have, they can actually gift you equity. That'll be your down payment. So they gave me 20% down. I financed somewhere around 61, 62, something like that. So we paid off the note. I gave them the rest of the money because there was a difference between 33 and 60 something. So I gave them the rest of the money. They paid off all their other debt. And then they rented from me for a really long time at the grand total of $1 a month. And so I didn't really make a lot of money on that one. But they were my grandparents. They helped raise me. So it was a good deal for them, a good deal for me. That's how I got started. But then I got a HELOC on that house. So I actually moved into that house a little while later. We made a duplex out of it. I lived on one side, they lived on the other, and I got an equity line of credit on it to buy the next house. So that's really how it got started. I used the equity in the first one, and there was a fourplex that was for sale in, I think it was February of 2002. I bought a little quadplex from Blake Adcock. He's an insurance guy here in town. And actually, no, he bought it from me. I bought it from Ronald Malden. He used to go to Dalton Church of God now Cross Point. So anyway, I bought it from him, and I told his agent I wanted to buy the house. The quad was listed at $127,000. So again, really good deal in 2002. So I bought it with 20% down, but the seller financed it, so that for me. I put down 5%, the seller held 15%, and the bank took 80% of the value. So we did some creative financing. I held it for about 8 months or so, and then I sold it for a profit. And then I flipped another triplex at that same time, that same year. And then April of the following year, anybody know what happens in April? It's a really big problem for people that flip houses.
Taxes.
Yeah. April is IRS month. So we get to April, and I had sold a triplex, and I'd sold a quadplex, and I made $54,000. And even though I was a college graduate, even though I was very astute with a business degree, I didn't realize that the IRS really wanted their piece of that too. So I had already spent all that money. I went to Mexico for a while. I went to Canada for a while. Had a great time. Great time. Then the IRS came calling, and I had to get that HELOC back out and borrow the money to pay my taxes. So it was at that point I learned that, you know, flipping houses is awesome and it's fun, but I probably ought to be a landlord because they don't take nearly as much of your money when you're a landlord as when you flip a house. So that's how I got started, at least being a landlord. So after that, I started keeping some of my homes. And funny enough, I still have that first house that my grandparents were going to lose them. It's still a rental for me today. Did you guys see the video that was posted along? So that video is actually the house that was my grandparents' house. All right, so then the next question. Have you ever regretted becoming a landlord? There was this one time. So this is not my actual hand, but it's very similar to the first time I ever regretted being a landlord. Who knows what that is? Somebody tell us.
Clean out.
Yeah, that is a septic clean out. So I can tell you, if you have pipes that are clogged and not draining well, this is where you find out just how bad the clog is. So that quadplex that I bought, that first one, I got a call on Saturday night. My tenants are all 4 tenants at the same time calling me like, hey, we got a problem. So not to mess up your lunch, but you know, the pipes weren't draining well. And so I go out there 10 o'clock on Saturday night, and all I did was touch this little thing right here. I didn't even unscrew it. I just touched it. And that thing blew up past my ear. And everything that was putting the pressure on that little piece right here, it all came out with it. So I had to go home wearing my underwear. And yeah, that was the first time I ever regretted being a landlord. So thankfully, you know, those things don't happen very often, but Paul up here has been a landlord for a long time. He said a good buddy of mine's name a minute ago, Dwayne Martin.
Dwayne,
Yeah.
Dwayne
That was the day I met Rookie. I called Rookie Martin, who owns a septic company around here, and I said, hey, I love you, man. You are my hero, because I'm never going to do that again. So anyway, so that was the time I regretted it. But honestly, before I get to this next one, the regrets have been very minimal, and the thankfulness has been just immense. So I'm really happy that I became a landlord a long time ago, because it's really provided a ton of wealth for my family. So that's why I'm excited about it. All right, I'm interested in learning more about rental agreements, contracts, insurance. All right, so we only have an hour. Can't really go into that, but each one of you have a packet that looks like this, okay? So we have, the first thing is the rental application. As Paul and I were talking earlier today, we've got a property that's listed right now. It's Old Traders Mill Road. We're going to talk about it a little more in a minute. Jennifer, how many people have expressed interest in that property?
Oh, probably 30?
Yeah, at
20
least.
something and 30, yeah.
At least 20 or 30 people have expressed interest in renting this little 2-bedroom, 1-bath duplex that we put on the market about a week ago. I would say it's probably even more than that. I've gotten at least that many Zillow inquiries, people wanting to see it. But of all of those people, this application's only been filled out about 5 or 6 times.
Or less than that.
Yeah, so it takes 40 to 50 people to end up with 5 or 6 applications. And if you've been doing this any length of time, you also know that these applications are only as good as what people put on them. So almost every application we get, half of the information is missing. So Getting all of the information on this application is the first step. So that weeds out 90% of the knuckleheads that you don't want renting from you anyway, okay? Make sure this application gets filled out all the way, whether it's this one or one of your own. Technically, you'll see at the bottom of all these pages, it says this form is copyrighted and may only be used in transactions, and then it has a blank for me to put my name in. So it says I have to be involved in it. I will tell you a good way to handle that is to read what's on here, put that on a different document, use exactly the same verbiage, it's fine, go make your own. Right? That's what I did for the first 11 years that I was a landlord. I got my license in 2011, but as you guys know, I started way before that. So I had some friends that were realtors. I took their information and I typed up my own, sent it to a lawyer. He's like, yep, looks good. And then I used it from that point forward. So if you want me to help you with that, I can fill these out. I can get your tenants to fill these out. But anyway, this is the information you need. It asks things like how long have you been on your job, where did you live before, what's your previous landlord's information. Getting all of that information is important, and using it. So just because they filled it out right still doesn't mean that they're good tenants. There have been times when I've called the previous landlord and the landlord said, oh, I didn't know they were moving. They owe me $6,000. And they haven't paid me since April. So it's always good to make that call. And at the same time, those landlords are incentivized to keep their really good tenants. So some of those landlords might not be forthcoming because they don't want that tenant to leave. So you kind of have to just use your instincts a little bit when you talk to prior landlords. And if you ask enough questions, they'll eventually get you the truth. So that's the first step. In that package, there's a lease agreement. We can get into the details of that. I really want to kind of get to a place where we can have more dialogue and talk about things more specifically, so I don't want to bore you with the next 30 minutes of going through that lease. Yes?
Regarding background checks and credit checks, how do we go about that?
There are tons of online resources to get background checks done and credit checks and things like that. We have recently started using a software that has a piece of that that's available. I think it's called Rent Ready. Yeah, I've got some resources at the end of the slideshow that can direct you to Rent Ready, which is what we use. I will say this, credit checks have never been a good indicator for me of whether or not somebody's gonna pay me. I've had tenants that have 450 credit scores that pay me well. And I've had tenants that have 850 credit scores that don't pay me well at all. So credit is one of those things where they view rentals different than they view their car payment or they view their other payments that they have. There are some tenants that just do not understand that it's hurting their credit when they don't pay that credit card on time. But they would never be late on their rent because they don't want to be homeless. And so those people just don't understand finance very well. And so credit to me is secondary. I'd love for them to all have good credit, but if they have good credit, they are really financially savvy, and they have plenty of money, they're probably talking to me about buying a house. They're probably not talking to me about renting a house. There's a reason that they're tenants. Now, some tenants are here because they're working at Shaw for the next 2 years, and they just don't want to be committed to Dalton because they're going to move back to wherever they're from. So you kind of have to look at the whole picture. I never put too much emphasis on one thing. I always try to look at the whole application. I put a ton of faith in somebody who's been on their job for 10 years. One of the reasons is if they don't pay me, I can get a garnishment, and they don't want any trouble at their office, right? If they've got a job that they've had for 10 years, they don't want any garnishments, they don't want anything to upset what's going on at the office. So I would much rather have a tenant that's been at the job 10 years than an 800 credit score. I see those 800 credit scores as probably more risk to leave me sooner, honestly. One of these questions I'm going to talk about in a minute, hidden costs. One of the hidden costs of being a landlord is vacancy. When every day that house is not occupied, it's costing you money, taxes, insurance. All that still happens whether you have a tenant or not. So I would say vacancy is the dangerous thing. So if you've got somebody who's been on the job 10 years, that also tells you a lot about that person. If they've had 7 jobs in the last 6 months, they're probably not going to stay with you long either, right? So I would say put some more emphasis on the history of the job. And if they've been at their prior location for 10 years, and before that they lived somewhere for 10 years, they're probably gonna be with you for a while, right? Like, that's the kind of person we're looking for, somebody who doesn't hop around a lot. And while it's not really a topic to talk about, if they've been divorced 4 times, I'm probably not running to them either, you know? If they've got 6 kids and 5 daddies, I'm like, well, it's probably not the tenant that I'm looking for, right? So, you know, at the risk of being a little politically incorrect, that shows me they don't plan on sticking to a commitment, right? So, you know, some things happen. I get that divorces happen. I'm not saying that, you know, you gotta be married 10 years before you rent from me. I'm just saying, at some point, you look at the whole picture and you go, these folks aren't very committed, you know? So that's what I look for. Let's see. Insurance. So that's a good question. I would say there's nothing in your package that's gonna talk about insurance, but I would say that you're gonna be required to have insurance on the property if you get a loan, so that's the first step. One of the things that kind of gets overlooked, we talked about it a second ago, is title insurance when you're buying a place. Attorneys typically go back about 50 years and do a title insurance. They do a title research, and they will give you insurance based on what they found, but sometimes they miss things. And we have run into a couple of occasions recently where title insurance had to be used. It's only a couple $100. Most of the rental properties you're gonna buy is, you know, $300 or $400 for title insurance. But what it does is fight against any of the prior sales that weren't done well. And there have been a couple of attorneys in this town that have been disbarred because of their practices. And so when you run into that, you will wish you spent that $400. It's a really good policy to get. So that's the first insurance, is when you buy the place, get title insurance. Insurance, the way that I look at it, I tend to just get catastrophic type policies. I want a very high deductible. I'm gonna keep extra cash in the account to manage the little things that come up. If a fire destroys the whole house, obviously I want insurance for that. The problem, if you own more than 5 or 6 rentals and you have insurance and you got a low deductible of $1,000 and, you know, hail comes and you need to replace the roof, when you file that claim, you've got 5 policies now that also get affected because you have a claim history. So the more you can keep your claim history down, the better off you're gonna be when it comes to insurance costs. So I have high deductibles, because if it costs $5,000 to fix something at one of my houses, I'm just gonna pay for that. I'm not gonna file a claim against it, because over time, those insurance premiums never stop, you know? So that would be a mistake if you file a bunch of small claims. All those premiums go up, right? Let's see, what other insurances? Umbrella policy. That is a really important insurance that I overlooked early in my career, and it needs to be one of your line items in your expenses. Umbrella policies help you when somebody falls through a deck, or there's a water heater that's been leaking for 5 years and you didn't know it, and the floor got weak and they break their ankle and they sue you. If you've got an umbrella policy, they're not gonna sue you for more than that covers, unless there's some crazy thing where somebody dies. Can't say anything about that. But a broken ankle will be covered by your regular policy, plus your umbrella. Keeps you out of almost 99% of the problems. Let's see, landlord's rights for evictions, we're gonna come back to that one. LLCs, I own an LLC. An LLC is just a limited liability company, that's all. It limits your liability. From a tax perspective, if you're the sole owner of that LLC, you're gonna get treated just like an individual, so there's really no tax benefit to an LLC. This is probably a good time to say I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, I don't have any other extra initials after my name, so go seek all those really important professional people that can get in trouble for giving advice, and I don't give advice. I tell you what works for me. So when you're owning a rental property, an LLC is a better solution than an S-Corp, because there are some extra things that happen in an S-Corp that is not favorable for rental property. It is favorable for flipping houses or owning a real estate agency. It's not favorable enough for me. I just have LLCs. I've got 3 of them, and I typically do everything inside of those 3. Get the umbrella policy that we talked about a minute ago in the name of the LLC. Get one for yourself, because you may be liable for something you didn't realize individually, plus the LLC may be responsible for something. So umbrella policy in both, or also insured, is the way to go there. Do we have any insurance agents in the room? Anybody licensed agent? Okay. I'd say y'all can get up here and talk about that part. All right, so that's that question. How are we doing so far?
Good.
Good. What do you charge for late fee for tenant? We typically charge $50. That's usually punitive enough that they'll pay it. It's not so punitive that they won't pay it and they'll just move, so we get an extra $50. If it's a situation where it's commercial property, it's gonna be more. If it's a really high dollar rental, it might be more. If it's an Airbnb, that's a whole different conversation. We can talk about that.
Is that gonna be on a daily basis, the $50, or per week, or how do you?
Well, so that's a great segue into the next question. How do you deal with tenants or renters who are unable to pay? Well, we only charge that $50 one time because we also don't wait very long. So we tell all of our tenants, and in this package, you'll see rules and regulations. And so one of the rules and regulations that we make them sign, it says your money is due on the 1st, it is late on the 5th, and you're gonna be evicted on the 10th. And those are non-negotiable. That is just how we operate. I did have a property manager one time who said that to them and then never filed until the 20th or the 23rd. That gets to be a problem. In the state of Georgia, it's a very landlord-friendly state. So the state of Georgia has basically said if they agree to that setup, then that's what we're gonna go by. Now, every now and then you'll get a magistrate judge who doesn't understand the law, and you have to kind of deal with that. Yeah, you guys probably all met one of those magistrate guys. Yeah, I would say in Whitfield County, they almost always go by the law. Murray County, sometimes they just do what they want over there. And so there have been a couple of times when he agreed that we had the right to evict him, and he still didn't evict him. He said, well, we're gonna give him another chance. Excuse me, sir, we're in the law, does it say we get another chance? Anyway, so it's due on the 1st, it is late on the 5th, and we're gonna evict you on the 10th. So we don't do $50 per day because you're not gonna be there long enough for us to get a couple $100. And ultimately, all I want is the property back. I don't care to get an extra $50 every month. As a matter of fact, it gets on my nerves because I can't depend on you. And at some point, I've done this a long time, at some point that $50 late fee is not enough because they're gonna move. They don't have the money to pay. So ultimately, the answer to this question is the next question. Tell me about the eviction process. So that's how we deal with tenants who are unable to pay. I probably seem like a heartless, just mean, evil capitalist in this room, but I will just tell you, like, these are the rules. If you want to rent from us, we follow the rules. That's how it works. So we will evict you on the morning of the 11th. We will check the P.O. box, and if you didn't pay, we're going to the courthouse. The way we fill out that lease, it says you owe us $250 for an admin fee if we make it to the courthouse without your money. I will give you plenty of opportunities. It's due on the 1st. If you want to pay it on the 28th, that'd be really wise. But if you get paid on the 3rd or whatever and you mail it in, okay, fine, send a late fee. But if you can't figure out how to pay us by the 10th this month, there's a really good chance you're not going to figure out how to pay us by the 10th of the next month. I feel like you probably need to find another place to live, and if you don't recognize that on your own, I'm going to help you. And hopefully the magistrate judge will too. And so I want to file it on the morning of the 11th because the process is the magistrate court says, do you want to find them or do you want to tack it on their door? I always tack it on the door because I want the property back. That's the most important thing to me. I don't care about the $50 late fee. I don't even care about the $250 admin fee. That's just a punishment in case they do decide to pay. What I really want is the property back, and I really want it back the 1st of the next month, right? So I go to the magistrate court on the morning of the 11th. I say, hey, I want to file these, I want to evict these people. It's called a dispossessory. So you fill out the paper, you give them $97, I think. And so then they send the constable out sometime in the next 2 or 3 days. He goes out, tacks it on the door. They've got 7 days from the day he tacks it on the door to respond to this thing. And so during that 7 days, it's the morning of the 11th, right? So let's say he doesn't get there till the 14th, right? Then they've got 7 days to respond. Well, now we're at the 21st. And if they're a really smart tenant, they always wait until the night of the 20th, right? Because they're trying to buy time. Their hope is that you're a sloppy landlord and it's going to take you 2 or 3 weeks to get this done, and it's going to take you 2 or 3 more weeks to get the constable out there. And so they try to stretch it out as far as they can. So anyway, the night of the 20th, they respond. On the 21st was the deadline. The constable calls and the magistrate court calls and says, hey, we got a response. Your court date's tomorrow at noon, or it's 2 days from now at 3 o'clock or whatever. So we're probably around the 23rd. Okay, so we're on the 23rd. The tenant says, nope, didn't pay it. You say, okay, well, great. The judge says, okay, you didn't pay him. He says you owed it to him. You now have 7 days to get out. So now it's the 30th, right? So I'm hoping by the 30th they're actually gone and I get the key back and all's good. If they are still there, you gotta go back to the magistrate court. You gotta give them more money. And eventually they say, okay, great. We got the extra $25 for the set out. We're gonna call the constable. He comes out a couple more days. Now it's the first of the next month when you're actually putting their stuff on the sidewalk. So if you don't stick to the 11th as the day you're gonna kick them out, you're gonna end up missing 2 months worth of rent. And vacancy is a killer, so don't do that. Get them out as soon as you can. And it's better for them too, because you're constantly gonna have to argue with them and get them to pay you. And somewhere along the way, you're gonna forget they didn't pay you 1 month, because you've been doing this for 20 years. And so, like, you know, just go ahead, kick them out, stick to your guns. That is the eviction process. Any questions so far about the eviction process? Okay. How do you find price units, or how do you price units for rent and find comparables? So that is a really tough thing, and I'm actually going to sit down here for a second, because Rent-O-Meter is one that I love, but it's no longer free. And you see my little frown right there. It's unfortunate. Let's see, is it going to let me switch? I've got it pulled up here. I wanted to show you what Rent-O-Meter looks like. I don't know which one of those tabs it is. Here we go. All right, so this is, no, it didn't go. Carl! Oh, I want to end the slideshow. I bet that will do it. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, 200 Old Prater Mill Road is a property we just bought. And it is a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and we are asking $900 a month. This tells me that 900 is way below rent, and you look at that and go, what in the world? Well, if you see this map down here, it shows you where all of the properties are that they're comparing you to. So, this little red dot up here, we are trying to rent something in Barnell, and all of the comps are down here, right? So we have to figure out, how much does it cost me to be that far outside the city, right? Now, because I'm a realtor, I also have a ton of other data to look at. I could probably get $1,000 a month for it if I wanted to update the landscaping, paint the building, make it nice. The other thing about this particular property is it has concrete walls inside. So it's painted, it's cute, but it's concrete. I like concrete walls. Less for the tenant to tear up. I've patched way more sheetrock in my life than I really want to. So when it's got concrete block walls, that makes me happy. Because I'm like, well, they at least won't tear that up, you know. I do try, side note, I do try to get materials that are more durable than aesthetically pleasing, right? Do not like carpet in a rental. A lot of people like carpet in a rental. It's cheap, it's easy to replace, but I have found that every time I put carpet in a rental, I'm replacing it the next time I need another tenant. And so if you get LVP, like this stuff that we're walking on right here, you can literally pour a glass of water on that, come back in a week, and the water's still sitting there. So I prefer LVP. Whatever material I can find that is durable, that's what I want. But at any rate, I know that this is probably different than these comps. I've also looked at those other things that I told you about in the list. Your friendly local realtor is a really good place. If you've got a place that's for rent, call me. Let me know what you're looking at, and I'll tell you, well, here's what renting down the street. Because I've been doing this so long, and I've owned, at one point, I think I had 40 rentals. I'm down to about 10 or 12 right now. I've owned places all over this area, so if you have a question about something in Crandall, good news, I've rented something there. If you got a question about Carbondale, I've rented something down there too. So call your local friendly realtor. There are other realtors besides me who are landlords. Jeff Pickens back in the room. Wave. He can tell you, yeah. He can also tell you what a typical rent would be. He is a mobile home king, so he knows all about those as well if you want to know more about that. Property managers are great resources. There's one that we've worked with in the past, Connection Rentals, Aaron David. Charlie White at Kennard Realty is a property manager. He has, I don't know, 400 or 500 doors that he's managing. Sonia Blake, there's 3 or 4 others. I can certainly put you in touch with them if you need more detail. Zillow is another great place. I show people Zillow all the time because it just shows you how little supply there is in our area for rental property. And the demand is just off the charts. There's so many people that need a rental and so few to choose from. That's one of the reasons the prices have gone up lately, but Zillow's a great place to look to see what your competitors are. So it won't tell you rented property in the past, but it will tell you what's available today. So if you know what's available today, you can price yours accordingly. That's how we came up with 900 on our unit that's available right now. There are no other options at that price that are comparable when you look at the pictures. Biggerpockets.com is a great place. I mean, you've been to Bigger Pockets before. Okay, so guys in the back there. Biggerpockets.com it's kind of a blend of like, it's a social media network just for real estate investors. So they have forums where you can kind of chat with people, you can connect with people. They've got DMs, like direct messages, much like Facebook or Facebook Messenger. Just a ton of information on there. I've been a member for 14 years, and it's grown a lot over the last 14 years. They got a podcast, they've got blogs, tons of information. It's a great resource. You should certainly consider it. What are some of the hidden costs of owning rental property? So I told you about vacancy. Capital expenditure is one of those things that probably shouldn't be a hidden cost because it's right there in plain sight, but a lot of people forget it when they're doing the spreadsheet of, is this thing going to cash flow or not? So a capital expenditure is like a roof or an HVAC, something that costs a lot of money up front that doesn't wear out this year. So if you put flooring in a house, you can make that a capital expenditure. The real difference between just a regular repair and a capital expenditure is how you classify it on your tax return. If you spend $10,000 this year putting flooring in a house and you take that full $10,000 as an expense, well, that's a repair. If you take that $10,000 and you're going to depreciate it over the next 5 years, that is a capital expenditure. And we have an accountant in the room that might disagree with me. You're an accountant, right? Aren't you like the CPA? So ask your CPA. That's probably the best answer that I can give you. But I will tell you that usually an HVAC, a water heater, a roof, those kinds of things are going to be expensed over time. So when you're doing your calculations and trying to figure out is this going to cash flow or not, don't forget the roof. It will run out at some point. It will stop working. You will have to replace it. All right, repairs, maintenance, you guys know what that is. Utilities and landscaping are one of those things that kind of you forget about, you don't realize, but you are going to have some utility expense. If you have that vacancy that we talked about and the guys don't pay and they leave, sometimes they leave in the middle of the night and you don't know they're not going to pay. They leave, on the 15th of the month prior, and then you find out on the 1st that they're gone, they didn't pay. You gotta go do some landscaping, you gotta do some work in the house, you gotta clean up the place, get a dumpster. You've got to do, a lot of times you gotta have power to put flooring in, right? You gotta have a saw, you gotta have water to paint. So all of those costs are things that don't really show up in a spreadsheet a lot of times, but they are true expenses. Power, water, gas, all those things. Court costs are one of those things that you don't think about until you need it. Taxes and insurance are obviously not hidden, but that is part of the formula. And there you go. Is there a basic formula for calculating the estimated profit margin when looking at a property? I would say there's not a basic formula because there are way too many variables. It depends on what property you're looking at. So when I got this question, I thought about like just doing a case study with you guys. And so I want to go to a spreadsheet that I put together. And this is one that I just bought. And so when you look at the sheet, you see that it says my target is a 10% yield. The yield is just how much money I've got in it. I want that money to make at least 10%. Now I want it to be higher, but 10% is like the minimum. If it doesn't say 10%, I'm not going to buy it. So you see that, and you're like, okay, my yield needs to be 10%. This is a negative yield. That means I'm losing money. Well, that's not a good thing to buy, right? But there's a little more to the story, and this is why there's not just a set formula, because there's always a factor that needs to be in play, and you can't just plug it in the spreadsheet, because if you just plug this in the spreadsheet, I should have never bought this house. So what it is, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath duplex, and then there's a 3-bedroom house. The total monthly rent for all of that is $2,900 a month. So I'm gonna get 35 grand, right? I'm gonna put 20% down, 52,000. I've got some closing costs, I've got some rehab. So my total outlay, $67,000. Well, that's terrible. All right, we got an 8% interest rate for 240 months. There's my monthly payment. When you factor in monthly payment up here, I've got all this rent, you got all the expenses, you got the mortgage, Well, you got negative cash flow. All these expenses are things that we've talked about, vacancy repairs, CapEx, all that kind of stuff, right? In this particular instance, the insurance is 4%, the property tax is 8%. Sometimes the tax is lower. That's a little bit high for property tax, but nonetheless, we're at 42% expense ratio. You do all that math, and even though this property appraised at $360, and I bought it for $260, I made money, right? It looks like I did, but when it comes to cash flow, I'm negative, so that's no good. Now, this was posted on the MLS, by the way. Any of you guys could have bought this place. So I looked at it and said, if I can sell that house and keep the duplex, then the numbers start to get in my favor. So as I did that, we got the home listed right now for $195. Let's say I overpriced it by 10 grand and I sell it for $185. I've got closing costs, I've got commissions. I still have to pay Angie. You know, she don't do this for free. All right, so we got commissions, we got some other costs. Tim Larkins is a home inspector in the back of the room. He costs money. When he goes out to the house, he's gonna cost you money. There's gonna be a rotten floor joist somewhere that you didn't know about. When I met him, he cost me $10,000. He found a fire that I didn't even know had happened in the house I was flipping. And I called him, I'm like, hey, I gotta get to know you because I want my 10 grand back. So you're gonna save me 10 on the next one. So we've been really good friends ever since, and he's saved me hundreds of thousands at this point. All right, so you put in 1% for other, whatever he finds in that home inspection. You're gonna spend $1,800 fixing it at a minimum, maybe more. All right, so my total cost of the sale is 10%. When you put all these together, it's 18 grand. You take that off. My net is 166. So what I'm gonna do with that 166, I'm gonna pay down the loan. I'm gonna take 133 and pay down that loan amount. So my new loan amount is $74,000 that I'm gonna owe on the duplex. Sold the house, keeping the duplex. So I got $75,000 roughly that I'm gonna owe. I'm gonna give myself back $33,000 because remember I put 67 in on that other page. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give myself some of it, pay back some of it. Well, now when I do this math, my mortgage is only $7,500 a year. So now I've got $4,000 that I'm making in free cash flow. Right? Everybody following along? Makes sense? Any questions so far?
Was this property bought recently?
Yeah, I bought it once.
I looked at it.
What's that? You looked at it?
Yeah.
It was popular. There were
The numbers look good on it, but
there were people in the driveway when I got there and when I left. All right, so that's an example of a basic formula. What are some of the legal risks that a renter has that can cause risk for the property owner and ways to hedge against those risks? I might have copied that wrong. All right, so I told you earlier, Georgia is a very landlord-friendly space. Because of that, there are a bunch of slumlords out there that don't take care of their property. That is probably changing soon. Our very own Casey Carpenter is a representative at the state level, and he's introduced a bill to kind of curb some of the slumlord mentality that we have around here in the whole state, but he's very aware of what's going on here. There are several properties I've walked in recently that when I walked in the door, I could smell it from the outside to start with, but when I walked in the door and I looked up at the ceiling, it was black, complete black, just full of mold, and the landlord just wasn't taking care of it. So he's introducing a bill to try to take care of that. Some of those unintended consequences, though, will mean we have to do things as landlords that we probably shouldn't have to do, but we have to because not everybody's a good landlord. So I'm sure all of you guys are great landlords, but the best way I can tell you about the legal rights is this right here. This little link is the Georgia Tenant Landlord Handbook. And so that is being updated, that link is being updated by the University of Georgia and Georgia State University. They're combining to basically comb the Georgia Senate rules and House rules. And so when a bill gets passed and the governor signs it and it goes into effect, they update this link. And so that's the best thing I can give you. It's about a 30-page document. It tells you things of what you can do and what you can't do. One of the things that I learned the hard way is that just because a tenant doesn't respond to you doesn't mean you can move their stuff out of their house. So when I was a very young man, still single, no wife, no kids, and not a lot of sense, I had in my lease, if you didn't communicate with me after 30 days, I considered the place abandoned and I could move your stuff to the curb. And so, in all of my wisdom, I thought that was gonna be the law, because they signed the document. Well, just because they signed the document doesn't mean the law is gonna agree with you. So there was this one time where I let her slip on the rent. I didn't enforce my 1 day, 5 day, 10 day rule. And she didn't pay me in September. And so in October, I'm like, hey, you didn't pay for September. I need October's payment. Oh, I'll pay you next week. So that goes by. Then she goes to me from October to November. So nothing happened. Well, she was gone, clearly gone, left a mess at the house. Like she left the door unlocked. It's not like I walked in with a key. It was literally unlocked. I pushed the door open. So I see all her stuff there and I go set it out on the curb. And then she calls me and says, why did you put my stuff on the curb? I was like, you haven't called me in 2 months. At this point, it's December. She's like, well, that's my stuff. And you damaged my grandmother's table. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, how much is your grandmother's table worth? Oh, it can't be replaced. It's sentimental. So she actually sued me because I moved her stuff out. Even though she hasn't paid me rent since September. She sued me. And lucky for me, I filed the eviction the next day when she said she was going to sue me for her grandmother's table that's irreplaceable. I filed the eviction the next day. Those court dates happened the same day. So I went to court that morning, got the eviction, went to court that afternoon, and she didn't even show up. Now, she could have won that case. I broke the law. She could have won the case. But she didn't show up because she got the eviction that morning, so she thought she had lost. And so she didn't show up that afternoon. And so ultimately, I go back on December 23rd, the day before Christmas Eve. I move her stuff out again. and she's there, and she's upset with me. And a lot of people think I'm heartless for that story, including my wife. And the reality is, she lived for free for 4 months. She had plenty of money. She could have rented somewhere else. She didn't have to stay in the unit that she hadn't paid for in almost half a year. So ultimately, if I had read that, I would have known way better that, oh, you can't just go move their stuff. You actually have to file the paperwork first. Another thing that thing tells you is you can't turn the power off. If the power's in your name, and you give them occupancy, and they don't pay you, you can't turn the power off. I've had friends that are landlords, it's like, oh, just shut the power off. And I'm like, oh, you're going to go to jail. They do not take that lightly. The court does not like it when you turn the power off.
And water.
Water's the same way. Any utility. Yeah, any utility. So because of that, in our lease, we say you must get the power in your own name. We'll be cut off on day 3. And so, like, we tell them ahead of time, this is when it gets cut off. You got to have it in your name by then. So that's how we avoid it. So yeah, that's the end of the slideshow, and there's some more information I'm happy to share. I talked the whole time, which I really wanted that to be more interactive. Thank you for your question. I hope all your friends learn from you. Now we ask a bunch of questions. All right, so what do you guys think? Yeah.
First question, so there seems to be 16,000 apartment complexes going up in this town. What is that gonna do to rent?
Oh, that is a great question. Hold on, let's see, where is my crystal ball? Let's see. Oh, I left my crystal ball at home. The real answer, I don't know. The speculative answer that I've given to many people is they are building about 800 to 1,000 units total in Winfield County right now. So inevitably, more supply means that the price should go down. Now, the question that is hard to answer is how much demand is there, right? If they're building 800 and we have 900 people that want the places, nothing changes, right? We've still got 100 people that need a place to live. I don't know how many tenants we have out there. I know we have created thousands of jobs in this town in the last 6-7 years. The number of jobs created when we already have an unemployment rate below 5% means that those people have to come from somewhere, right? Our unemployment rate didn't go to 2%. It's pretty much floated the same place between 3.5% and 5% over the last decade. So, almost decade. So, those people are coming from other places, and we're hiring them, and they're staying here, and they're renting. A lot of them are renting. I think the demand is high enough to absorb what they've built, but I also think the demand is different than what they've supplied. So, there is a grand opening next week, I think, for the old downtowner motel. A lot of you guys know the name Downtowner. It's now called something really cool like Dalton Station or something. So they've converted all of those hotels to micro apartments is what they call them. So it's a really fancy word for a hotel room. That's basically what it is. And so they started out charging $11.50 for 284 square feet. So.
Well, that begs my question.
Yeah.
You've got all this new construction that's very expensive, all the regulations.
Yeah.
So you're talking about higher end prices out there on those apartments.
Uh-huh.
Those of us that have some lower end, middle below lower end apartments, it's not gonna affect us at all.
Likely, that is true, likely, and I say likely for a couple reasons. So I tell you about the budget hotel there, or whatever it's called now, Dalton Station, 284 square feet for $11.50. They've come down to about $8.95 an hour, $8.50 or something like that. So it's still super expensive. It's also a hotel room. Most of the tenants that we see have kids, at least kids every other weekend. Like the 284 square feet is not going to meet that demand. There may be some demand out there that causes those places to lease up. It's going to be hard for me to see the whole place lease up. There's 124 units that are that way, right? So I think it's going to be hard on them. So some of that supply doesn't get filled, and that doesn't mean that your quadplex changes or your lower end changes, because that's a mismatch on supply and demand. So that's part of the problem. We've got the Crow Valley apartments, that's another 200 and something units that are subsidized housing. So that doesn't hurt the lower end, because now they can fill out some applications, they can show that they make less money, and they go get a really nice apartment up there, nicer than we can give them, for what costs them $300 a month, and the actual rent, the taxpayers in this room are gonna pay for that. So they're gonna be getting a total of $1,400 a month for that unit. The government's paying 11, the person's paying 3. So that will affect the lower end demand. But Dalton Housing Authority has a wait list, it's like 2 years long, so most of those people are just gonna go there. I mean, I feel sorry for the guy who just got his apartment at Dalton Housing Authority last week, because he's not gonna be eligible for the really nice apartment on the hill, right? Like that guy's gonna get the place over on Underwood, right? So it stinks for him, but the new guy, or the next guy on the list is gonna have a really nice apartment. So that does kind of affect it, but I don't know how much. Again, Dalton Housing Authority has a huge list. And a lot of the people that are gonna apply at Crow Valley, you wouldn't take as a tenant. Like they're not gonna be tenants you want. Pets, things like that. You know, you gotta think about that.
You see a difference, or
Go ahead.
you see a difference in demand for somebody like the apartment buildings off Hammond Creek, or a multi-family unit compared to somebody that would want to rent a detached or a duplex or something like that?
Yes.
It's definitely different living environments.
The single-family rental market is a totally separate thing than the multifamily living arrangement. Now, what happens a lot of times, somebody graduates from Augusta Medical and decides to move to Dalton, work at Hamilton Medical Center. They're gonna go live at the Hamilton Lofts, which just came online. Those are more of those units. They're gonna go pay $1,600 a month for a one-bedroom, really nice place, but it's a one-bedroom. They're paying $1,600 a month for it. I know one of them. They just became nurses at Hamilton. And so she's already trying to get out of that, because one bedroom is not what she's used to. She came from the dorm environment, and she was like, oh, this is fine while I'm in school. But then when she moved to an apartment, and she's a big girl now, it's like, oh, this is not what I want at all. And the pool's awesome, and that's all great and good, but she wants to be able to walk outside and not have to talk to her noisy neighbor.
Yeah.
And so once they realize what it's like to live in an apartment, they usually leave them. And even if it's a quad, like that's still better than 17 units all in this one building, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. The lofts we talked about, Crow Valley we talked about, the Dalton Station. There's another apartment downtown, walkable to downtown where the old jail used to be. I think they're calling that the Dalton. I mean, come on, people, where are your marketing folks at? It's literally, the town is called Dalton. Why are you calling it the Dalton? Anyway, so the marketing person in me is really tore up about that. Those are gonna be super nice. They're also gonna be super expensive. If you want to walk the downtown,
3-2 garages in there, if I'm not mistaken.
you're gonna pay about $3,000 a month for a 3-2 garage. So, man, how many of those jobs in Dalton are $100,000 a year where you can afford to pay $36,000 to live and walk downtown? I don't know. The demand we see the most is the person that works in a carpet mill who's had 3 promotions, who's making $57,000 a year, and his wife is probably working part-time, she's making 20 grand a year, and they need something nice for about 1,400 a month to 1,800 a month, something nice at that price point. That's 3 or 4 bedrooms. So what they built, we don't need. Like, we do need it. We do want those other people to be here too. We want the median household income to go up, which, by the way, it has tremendously over the last few years. We're at $57,000 a year in the median household income. So now we are at the point where Target and Publix are looking around. We don't have any land for them, that makes sense, but they are both, Publix and Target have both had site selectors locally recently. So when that median household income goes up, there are a lot of good things that happen to a community, so that's why the chamber's pushing it, that's why the JDA is pushing it. They want that median household income to come up, so they like seeing those apartments at the jail, if we can fill them. But I think the people that I know in this room that have rentals, I think your rentals are probably safe. A 4-bedroom for $2 grand a month is way better than a 3-bedroom for $3 grand. A 4 for $2 grand is way better than a 3 for $3.
You mentioned mobile homes as well. What's kind of the difference on that compared to a traditional single-family home?
Not much difference as far as rent goes these days. I have been anti-mobile home since I grew up in one. So, no judgment on people that live there, but I have not bought any on purpose as a rental for me to keep forever. I just don't like mobile homes. The quality of construction is terrible, and it's just it's always been a pain to me. I will say, and Angie can testify, over the last year, I have decided that mobile homes might be a good play. Housing has become unaffordable for our area. It's been very affordable for a long time. The last 15 years, housing affordability in Dalton has been the best in the country. It's starting to not be that way, and prices have really gone up 47% in the Dalton Metro, which is Whitfield and Murray County, 47% since somebody mentioned the word COVID. That's an incredible amount of increase in the cost of a house, 47% increase, it's nuts. So that housing affordability is a problem now that we've never had to deal with before. Now, we are a manufacturing town, we've always had very low wages, so that's why you see so many mobile home parks here, but the county doesn't want you to build a mobile home park. The county doesn't want any mobile homes in this place. If they could get rid of all of them tomorrow, they would.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, if you can find one and you can make it nice, you will have a steady flow of income forever. They can't build a house as cheap as you can buy a mobile home.
I just rented a 370 square foot mobile home
Mm-hmm.
to a single guy who makes about $1,500 a week. He wouldn't have passed the credit check because there's a difference in having bad credit and not having any credit.
No, that's true.
And many people with low credit scores don't have any credit. And he paid me he's paid me $800 a month. Utilities are furnished. He's thrilled to have an $800 deposit. And he's thrilled to be there.
Yeah.
He almost runs over to pay the rent.
I've gotten to where I love the mobile home. I hated it for a long time, but you and Jeff have made me believers.
Would you ever consider, I'm just asking questions.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider if you had a piece of land, letting someone put a mobile home on it and you rent the land to them? Or how does that dynamic work, if you're familiar with it?
It's awesome when it works, and there are friends of mine in Chatsworth that have made it absolutely killing that way. It is more difficult to evict somebody when they own the home. It is not like an eviction when you own the home and you're just evicting them from the premises. It takes about 3 to 6 months to get that mobile home gone, unless you pull off some kind of deal with the person. A lot of times, the guys who are really successful in that business buy the mobile home back. And so they own the lot, they rent the lot to them, they fall in financial hardship, and my buddy Brandon goes over and says, golly gee, I hate that you lost your house and that you're gonna have to move. It's gonna cost you 10 grand to move this thing. I'll give you 5, and man, you can take the 5 grand and just leave it here. And man, they make a killing. And then the next guy comes along like, hey, I'll sell you this mobile home for 10 grand. All you gotta do is give me, $200 now, $200 a week for the rest of your life, and you can own this place. And so that strategy works really well. Yeah. I haven't done it that way, but man, I know a ton of people who got rich doing it that way. What else you guys got? So, just a little point of clarification. Paul here has got 376 square foot trailer that somebody's willing to pay $100 a month for. But the Dalton Station guys are having a hard time with 280 for it, $800 a month. So that's the testament of how much more people would like to have their own dirt than live in an apartment complex.
Yeah, they'll take that mobile home over an apartment, ain't they?
Oh, yeah. Like that's the problem that we have with all this new construction that's happened is it's a supplied product that doesn't necessarily match up the demand.
See, I'm convinced though that if they can't build a 3 or 4 bedroom apartment for less than $2,500, $3,000 a month, just can't do it. It's a pipe dream. And the only choice you have at this point is a manufactured home.
Yeah, I think manufactured homes are a great place to invest.
Get your own land.
Yeah.
And personally, we got 2 rental lots. And I'm trying to buy the units to get them out of there
Yeah.
because it's just crazy.
I've got a buddy that bought a 20-unit place.
Wastewater, I mean, you just.
I got a buddy that bought a 20-unit place for $499 and it's probably worth $900 today.
Where do you put your investment on cosmetics to the property to rent value? Like, where do you cut the line and say, this isn't worthwhile because I'm not gonna be able to increase the rent enough? Or this is a good project because it will allow me to raise my rent and be, you know.
I'm glad you asked that question because there's a point in that little talk I was supposed to say my favorite phrase of rental property. Safe, sound, and secure. That's all I do. I want it to be safe, sound, and secure. I don't know that I've ever installed granite countertops in a rental. I've never seen it pay off to the point that I can get more rent. The rent is more about, can I get my kids in there? Like, I've got 4 kids, can they each have a corner so that they don't fight all day? Like, that's what I want. Over the years, in 2003 and 4, I had a ton of demand for large land. Like, they wanted a house with 2 acres so the kids could go play in the woods. It almost never happens these days because everybody's on their phone or their tablet, their kids are in their room all day playing video games. Like, they just don't even play outside anymore. Very rarely, I shouldn't say it never happens. We have a property on Cherokee Trail where they probably invested, I don't know, $10,000 in a deck themselves. They built a deck, they got an above ground pool, the gate, they got a gate, a fence around it. Like, I mean, they're gonna be there forever. So I could raise the rent next month and it'd probably be good. But now they spend a ton of time outside, but it's so rare. Like, most people these days, I want bedrooms for my kids. So what I would do instead of putting granite countertops in is I'd figure out a way to get an extra bathroom in there so that if they got 4 girls, like, you know, get another bathroom. That's more attractive. If I can figure out a way to turn a carport into a closed-in space, that's more attractive. Give me more square footage for the price. That's what they want. Granite countertops don't matter. Crown molding doesn't matter. I mean, it's good for these apartments that they're building. It's all nice and fine, but not worth the money, is what I've seen.
Just
Yeah, so another realtor may have.
More stuff to damage and have to replace.
What's that?
More stuff to damage and have to replace.
Yeah, safe, sound, and secure. When I meet that threshold, I'm good. That's what I want to be. I don't try to put extra things in it. I've kind of gone back and forth on the dishwasher over the course of my career. Dishwasher is something I love. Like, I'm just not gonna wash dishes every day. But they tear up a lot, you know? So it's probably good to have it. That's one of those items where if you spend the money, you probably do get better at it because, you know, the wife is gonna look at that and go, I'm just not gonna get that place because they don't have a dishwasher.
Wash and dryer hookups are pretty important.
Wash and dryer hookups are definitely important. That's another place where you can spend some money.
That's where you can spend some money.
Yeah. That's right. It doesn't have one, give one, for sure. 100% agree with that. All right, what else we got? Does that mean it's 1 o'clock? Is that right?
No,
It is 1 o'clock. That was actually a good time. I'm good. I can stay till 3 o'clock. So y'all ask as many questions as you want.
only question I have is, what's the best way to get started into rental property? I mean, there's so many things you've talked about, and that's really great, and I've really learned a lot out of it. But kind of, you know, if you're gonna jump into it and you have some money you wanna invest in that, you know, how do you kind of gauge, where do you jump in at?
You need to look for a friend that you know and you probably go to church with who has a real estate license. That's a great place to start. Honestly, the best place to start is building what they call the team, right? So a good real estate agent, a good lender, get to know people in the industry. Your buddy Phil's got rental property, he's had to deal with it for decades, so he probably can give you some pointers. And and go look at properties that are out there. I mean, talking to the bank is really the first place to start. If you called me and I didn't know you, and you said, hey, I got 50 grand I wanna go invest with, I'd say, great, let's talk to Brad Ramsey at First National Community Bank and see what he says about how much you can borrow and that kind of thing. Typically, it's gonna be a 20% or 25% down situation. So at 50, I would want you to buy something where you put 30 down and you got 20 as a nest egg, because something's gonna break, a tenant's not gonna pay you, you've got some learning curve you've gotta get through, so put that 20 aside, let's go buy something 30 grand down. So you're probably looking at 150, right? I bought a duplex, I tried to buy a duplex, back in December for 165, little brick, 1 bedroom, 1 bath on each side. I put it under contract, and before I could even finish the contract, I had a friend that wanted to buy it, she called me about it, and I said, look, I'll let you have it. So she bought it for 165, she sold it a month later for 205. She worked with Brad, she put 20 or 25% down, she made 20 grand in 45 days. So those kinds of things are out there. Now that isn't a landlord situation, that was a flip, so now she's gonna have to remember Uncle Sam here in 3 or 4 months. But those kinds of things are out there all the time. It was on the MLS. It's not like it's a secret deal that I just told her about. It was on the MLS. Drew called me and was like, hey, have you seen that? And I said, no. And he explained it to me. I'm like, well, let's buy it. I don't even need to see it. A brick duplex for 165. There are real estate agents out there that just price things the wrong way. And there are sellers out there who tell their agents, look, I just want 165. I don't care what it's worth. Give me 165 and I'll be done. Okay. We will. So it happens. There are so many good deals out there. People think all the time that the market's gone up so high, there's just no good deals. We bought a ton this past year and a half. What you got?
One of the best ways that I found stuff is just, you look at something and you walk up and you figure out who owns it, walk up and introduce yourself and ask them if they're really selling, because you would believe how many 74-year-old men out there will say, yeah, I sold it today. And I mean, it's that easy and that fast. Yeah.
I'm going to look at one today at 3 o'clock that 84-year-old lady wants to sell it. Her husband passed away. She don't even know how much rent she's got coming in. She gave me a number she thinks is coming in. But she has no idea and doesn't want to own it, and has 2 sons, and neither son wants anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And so she wants to sell it. It's not on the market. Another agent brought it to me, but like man, those things are out there all the time. Just gotta want it. If you've got 50 grand to go put to use, go for it.
Well, and when Michael gets those deals brought to him like that, he's always thinking of everybody else first. Like, he's usually the last person to actually buy it.
The
He
Trader's
should.
Mill House, I've tried to get
Yeah.
2 of my investors to buy. I called them both, I'm like, hey, you should buy this. I will buy it if you don't, you should buy it. Jeff wants to get on that list, he's like, hey, call me then.
Well, I mean, that Prater Mill, I mean, I looked at that, but I had too many projects going on, I thought, man, that is a sweet deal right there.
So that brings up a good point. I've got a ton of y'all, there are 20 investors in this room right now. I don't want you to think that I will take all the good deals and I won't give them to you. I try to give them to my investors. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't believe you. I'm like, well, here's the thing. On that deal in Chatsworth, I would have made 20 grand, really easy, would have been awesome. I had virtually no risk in it. I would have made 20 grand, great. She bought it and we sold it, so I made commission twice. And now she's got 20 grand in her pocket and it is burning a hole in her pocket. She's like, hey, you got any more deals? So I've got an investor for life now. I'm gonna make 15 commissions on this deal because I wasn't selfish with the 20. I gave her the 20 and now I'm gonna make 100 because she's gonna buy all kinds of stuff. She is pumped. And it was such an easy deal for her. Like, she's like, let's go. She's trying to buy 2 different things right now. I'm like, hold on. If you're gonna buy a primary residence, just do that first and then we'll get back to the investing. But she's like, let's buy both. And so that's why I do it. Like, if I can get all of y'all to be my client, man, I'll make way more money than if I try to keep it all myself, you know.
So this question will share how much I don't know, because I don't know, so I'm here.
Welcome to the lunch.
You mentioned the MLS, how do you access that?
With your local friendly realtor who has a kid that's the same age as yours and y'all talk all the time, that's a really good place to find that. You probably know one of those guys.
Yeah.
That's the only way to access the MLS. Now, I will say, Zillow has done a really good job of partnering with agents, and everything that gets listed in the MLS hits Zillow about 30 minutes later. Like, it's an auto feed situation, so almost everything that goes in the MLS goes into Zillow. Now, a duplex situation that has 4 properties on it doesn't qualify for Zillow because it's not residential. So there are other MLSs like LoopNet and Crexy and CoStar that are commercial based. There's a joke in the industry, it's like LoopNet is where deals go to die. Because if it makes it to LoopNet, it's probably not a good deal. That's what most people say. Now, I've bought some from LoopNet too. Made tons of money now. Facebook Marketplace is a great place. I made probably $150,000 in 2021 from Facebook Marketplace. They would not let me list it. I begged and pleaded, like, let me list this. You're leaving $100,000 on the table. She said, no, not going to list it. I want to sell it, and if you want to buy it, you can. So I made her an offer. She took it. I split it up and sold it off and made it.
But how many times does that happen? I mean, how was me?
It's all the time.
Yeah, they don't wanna
The
listen.
lady I'm going to see
You
at
tell
3
them
o'clock
straight
tonight
up.
refuses to list it.
You tell them straight up, I'm getting you more money.
I'm writing this contract a lot of times. I'm like, I am going to split this and sell it and probably make 30 days. And they just don't do it. So I don't know. As far as anybody in this room, if you guys want to be on like a list where I send things out, because every now and then I'll find a deal and I can't do it or somebody else can't do it and one of my investors that's already signed an agreement with me can't do it, I'm happy to send that to you. I've got all your email addresses and contacts. Just shoot me a text or an email to say, hey, I want to be on that list where you send the good deals. Now, you know, once every 3 or 4 months I'll send one out and be like, hey, somebody take it. And so many times out of a group this size, there's only 1 or 2 of you that the timing is right, you've got the capital where you want to buy it, and it's a project you are actually interested in. There are a ton of times when nobody does it, and I end up buying it. So we have about 30 to 35 investors that we do that with that have bought with us. What else? All right, well, was it informative? Did you learn something today? Yeah. Well, good. Next month, I'm going to do a class on flipping. I've flipped somewhere around 120 houses in my career, so I'll be sharing some of that crazy knowledge with you next month if you want to come back.
We'll post it, you can respond.
Yeah, we may host it at a different place. We had to cap this one. More people responded than we have room for, so we may host it at a place down the road. What's it called, Common Ground. It's in the First Press building. They got a bigger meeting space, so we may move down there to host one on flipping. I know there's at least 20 people that want to come to that already, so there we go.
Thanks for lunch and your
Yeah.
time.
Thanks for coming.
There's plenty of food left.
Hold on,
if
before you
everyone-
go, we have door prizes. Brad, you got something here? Oh.
Well, and anyone who would like a t-shirt, please help yourself. I've got all sizes, all kinds up here.
All right. Pick a number between 1 and 30. Everybody got it? Write it down on a sheet of paper, hand it to me. That's right. So, we got 2 door prizes. Whoever gets the number right gets their pick.
Should we put our name on the paper so you know that?
Yes, name on the paper. Sorry, I thought that was, thank you.
What's your putting in or holding?
Angie's the collector. Yeah. I told her the number, so we'll see. Give me your papers, give me your papers. There you go. If you work for Southern North Georgia, you gotta give it to a friend. There we go, all right. Oh, goodness, there we go, here we go. Okay. You put your name in?
I did.
Okay. Yeah, you didn't? Well, one of these is not.
Door prize is mine.
Well, one of the door prizes here is one's from somebody else. You could have won the other one. All right. While she's taking this up, I'll just ask you, who said 23? Oh, come on. You people know me and you didn't shoot 23? I'm so disappointed. There's literally a Michael Jordan stand-up in my office. 23 was the number. All right.
So it's like Jennifer got closest.
Jennifer, 22, she works for Southern. Oh, there we go. Okay. She picked a friend. You get a dozen golf balls. Are you a golfer? Okay. Bobby's not a golfer. No, okay. Well, then you probably want this one. That is a gift card to Cyrus. $50 gift card to Cyrus. There we go. All right. Who's next? We got a 21. We got a.
Everything else.
That's it.
Yeah.
I I'm so disappointed in y'all, man. 23 and you, okay, 21. This is, Freddie Ortiz. There you go, sir. You play golf?
Yeah, I do.
If you don't, I'll All right.
Should've known this.
All right, so thank you for coming. If you guys have any questions after you leave here or didn't want to ask it today, please feel free to reach out.
If you want seconds, please don't.
Yeah, and please take some of this food with you. I want a breadstick, that's really all I want.